Hello, kindergarten, first and second grade friends. I hope you are well. I miss coming to your classroom, but for another week, this is the way we'll have to meet. I'm going to continue Babe the Gallant Pig. I've got my glasses on top of my head today. I'm going to try that because there's a lot of glare, and maybe you see just glare and reflection off my glasses. So we'll see. Let me know. Happy May. Excuse me. Happy May 1st. Today's May Day. Spring, I understand, is coming weather-wise. Tomorrow and Sunday are going to be really, really nice. I hope you get out there and ride your bikes and have a good time. So I hope you've been well. I know you're working hard in school, and your teachers are still working hard with it, right along with you. So today, and I apologize, I couldn't remember if we just read Miss Nelson is Missing. So what you can do is, if you don't want to hear it again, and if I did read it, is fast forward to where we are in Babe. But this is one of our favorite books. Makes us appreciate our wonderful, kind teachers. And this is by James Marshall, by Harry Allard and James Marshall. Miss Nelson is Missing. I'm sorry, it's Harry Allard. Mispronounced that. On the blackboard, what does it say? Miss Nelson is missing! Exclamation point. We're worried about her. Uh-oh. Nothing like any of you, of course. Look at those kids in class 207. The kids in room 207 were misbehaving again. Spitballs were stuck to the ceiling. Paper planes were whizzing through the air. They were the worst behaved class in the whole school. You're right. Now settle down, said Miss Nelson in her sweet voice. Uh-oh, there goes a plane. But the class would not settle down. They whispered and they giggled and they squirmed and they made faces. Exactly. Oh my goodness. They were even rude during story time. Can you imagine? Because none of you would do that to me, I know, or to your teachers. And they always refused to do their lessons. Now, what's this guy doing instead of his work? Now, it's not art class. He's drawing a picture of Miss Nelson. Look at Miss Nelson's face. She's upset. Something will have to be done, said Miss Nelson. The next morning, Miss Nelson did not come to school. Wow! Yelled the kids. Now we can really act up. And they began to make more spitballs and more airplanes. Let's just be terrible, terrible for the sub today. Not so fast, hissed a very unpleasant voice. Oops. Who is it? Do you remember? Did somebody say, da 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 da, Viola Swamp? You're right. A woman in an ugly black dress stood before them. I am your new teacher, Miss Viola Swamp. And she rapped the desk with her ruler. That means she took her ruler and went, Where is Miss Nelson? Asked the kids. Never mind that, snapped Miss Swamp. Open those arithmetic books, math books. Miss Nelson's kids did exactly as they were told. They could see that Miss Miss Swamp was a real witch. Uh-oh. She's pointing her pointy finger at him. And she meant business. Right away, she put them to work, and she loaded them down with lots of, homework. "We will have no story hour today," said Miss Swamp. "Keep your mouths shut, sit perfectly still, and if you misbehave, you will be sorry." Gulp. The kids in room 207 never worked so hard. Days went by. Wow. Days went by, and there was no sign of who? Miss Nelson. The kids missed Miss Nelson a lot. "Maybe we should try to find her," they said. Some of them went to the police. There's the detective. Detective McSmog was assigned to the case. He listened to their story. He scratched his chin. He said. "I think Miss Nelson is missing." Well, that's what the kids told him. Detective Smog would not be very much help. Other kids went to Miss Nelson's house, and who did they see? Viola Swamp. The shades were tightly drawn. No one answered the doorbell. In fact, the only person they did see was Miss Viola Swamp coming up the street. "If she sees us, she's going to give us more homework. Quick!" And they all got away just in time. Now they're starting to think. Maybe something really awful happened to Miss Nelson. "Maybe she got gobbled up by a shark," said one of the kids. But that didn't seem very likely. Wow! Sharks, very unpleasant if you're a person. "Maybe Miss Nelson went to Mars," said another kid. Nah, that didn't seem very likely either. "I know," exclaimed one know-it-all. "Maybe Miss Nelson was carried off by a swarm of angry butterflies." That was the least likely story of all. Very pretty, though. The kids in room 207 became very discouraged. It seemed that Miss Nelson was never, ever coming back, and they would be stuck with Viola Swamp forever. One day they heard footsteps in the hall. "Here comes the witch," they whispered. "Hello, children," someone said in a very sweet voice. "Who do you think it is?" It was Miss Nelson. She's back. Oh my goodness. Happy. "Did you miss me?" she asked. "We certainly did," cried all the kids. "Where were you?" This is a sign for secret. "That's my little secret," said Miss Nelson. "How about a story hour?" "Oh, yes," cried the kids. Miss Nelson noticed that during story hour, nobody was rude or silly. What brought about this lovely change? She asked the children. And they said, "That's our little secret." Oh. Back home, Miss Nelson took off her coat, hung it in the closet. What? Right next to what? The ugly black dress. What? Wait a minute. "I'll never tell," she said to herself with a smile. Did somebody say that Viola Swamp and Miss Nelson were the same person? Oh, you're right. Oh, wait a minute. Story's not over. P.S. Detective McSmog is working on a new case. You know who he's looking for now? Viola Swamp. So you mean to tell me that in order to teach the kids a lesson, did somebody say that? She dressed up like Viola Swamp. Oh, did it work? But you guys are so wonderful. Nobody would ever have to do that to you, right? Okay, here we go. Continuing, Babe the Gallant Pig. Where were we? Oh, a check. I've been looking for that check. Oh, anyway, I think, hold on a second. I think that the sheep are starting to listen to Babe because she speaks what? Very kindly to them. Here we go. Good morning, said Babe. I do hope this finds you well and not too distressed by yesterday's experience. And immediately it seemed that every sheep had something to say. We read this part already, but we'll just, hold on, review. Bless his heart, they cried, and dear little soul, hello, Babe, nice to see you again. And then there was a rasping cough, remember? We'll jump ahead. Who was coughing? Who's still coughing? Ma. Okay. As for Farmer Hoggett, and then we'll go to the next chapter, remember? He heard none of this conversation. He was so wrapped up with his own thoughts. Remember, he thought, you, Babe, are as good as a dog. Actually, he's better than a dog, than any dog. I wonder. Good pig, he said. And remember, he uncrossed his fingers because he was crossing his fingers to see if Babe would do well. Chapter 7. What's trials? Every day after that, of course, Babe went the rounds with Farmer Hoggett and Fly. At first, the farmer worried about using the pig to herd the sheep, not because it was strange and unusual, but not because it was a strange and unusual thing to do, which people might laugh at. He did not care about that, but because he was afraid it might upset Fly. Maybe she would feel that she's not needed and put her nose out of joint, make her feel hurt. However, it did not seem to do so. She was very proud. He would have spared himself the worry if he'd been able to listen to their conversation. That was fun, said Babe to Fly that evening. I wonder if the boss will let me do some work again. I'm sure he will, dear, said Fly. You did so well. It was almost as though the sheep knew exactly what it was that you wanted them to do. But that's just it. They did. I asked them. No use asking sheep anything, dear, interrupted Fly. You have to make them do what you want. I've told you that before. Yes, Mum, but will you mind if the boss uses me instead of you sometimes? Mind, said Fly. You bet your trotters I won't. All my life I've had to run around those idiots, uphill, downdale, day in, day out. And as for sometimes, as far as I'm concerned, my dear, you can work them every day. I'm not as young as I was, after all. I'd be only so happy to lie comfortably in the grass and watch you, my Babe. Oh, and before long, that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what she was doing. Once Farmer Hoggett could see that by her wagging tail and smiling eyes, she was perfectly happy about it. He began to use Babe to do some of her work. At first, he only gave the pig simple tasks. There's Babe, and there's Babe and the pig and the sheep. What were those simple tasks? But as the days and the weeks went by, Hoggett began to make more and more use of his new helper. The speed with which Babe learned amazed him, and before long he was relying on him for all the work with the flock, while Fly lay and proudly watched. Now there was nothing, it seemed, that pig could not do, and do faultlessly. What does that mean? Without fault, right? Without a mistake. That's the sign for mistake. Wow. He obeyed all the usual commands immediately and correctly. He could fetch sheep or take them away, move them to the left or to the right, persuade them to move around obstacles, through gaps, cut the flock in half, or take out one individual. To work on Ma, for instance, there was no need for Hoggett to bring all the sheep down to the collecting pen, or to corner them all and catch her by a hind leg with his crook. No. He could simply point her out to Pig, and Babe would gently work her out of the bunch and bring her right to the farmer's feet, where she stood quietly waiting. It seemed like a miracle to Hoggett, but of course it was simple. Ma? Yes, young'un? The boss wants you to give him some more. The boss wants to give you some more medicine. Oh, not again. That horrible stuff. But I think it'll make your cough better, Ma. Huh? Oh, come along, Ma, please. Oh, all right then, young'un. Anything to oblige you. Look. She trotted Ma off to Hoggett. And there were other far more miraculous things that Babe could easily have done if the farmer had only known. For example, when it was time for the Hughes to be separated from their lambs, now the ones that were almost as big and strong as their mothers, Farmer Hoggett behaved like other shepherds and brought the whole flock down to the pens, took a lot of time and trouble to part them. If only he'd been able to explain things to Babe. How easy it could have been. Dear ladies, will you please stay on the hill? If you would be so kind. Youngsters, children, you go down to the collecting pen, if you please. Oh, there you go, good boys and girls. And it could have been done in a shake of a lamb's tail. However, Babe's increasing skill at working sheep made Farmer Hoggett determined to take the next step in a plan which he had begun to form in his mind on the day that the piglet first penned the sheep. That step was nothing less than to take Pig with him to the sheepdog trials in a couple of weeks? Do you know what that means? That's the contest of the sheepdogs. Who do you think's going to win, sheepdog or Babe? How many of you said Babe? I'm with you. And I haven't seen the movie in a long time, or read the book in a long time. That step was nothing less than read that. Only just to watch, of course. Just to watch and see. Oh, darn. Not this time. Only just to watch, of course, just to see that he could have a look at what well-trained dogs and working a small number of sheep looked like, and to see what their handlers were required to do. I must be daft, crazy, thought Farmer Hoggett. He did not tell his wife his plan. Before the day came, he put a collar and lead on the pig. He could not risk him running away in a strange place. He kept him on the lead all one morning, letting Fly do the work as of old. He need not have bothered, because Babe would have stayed tight at heel when told, but it was interesting to note that the instant change in the atmosphere as the collie ran out. "Wolf! Wolf!" cried the flock. Every sheep was immediately on edge. They got nervous. "Wolf! Wolf is back!" Not really the wolf, the dog, right? "Move, fools!" snapped Fly, and she hustled them and bustled them with little regard for their feelings. "Babe! We want Babe!" they bleated. "Babe! Babe!" To be sure, the work was done more quickly, but at the end of it, The sheep were scared and trembling, and the dog, out of patience and breath, because remember, she's been relaxing while Babe has done the work on the farm. Steady, steady, called the farmer a number of times. Nothing he ever had to say to Babe. When the day came for the local trials, Farmer Hoggett set off early in the Land Rover. Fly and Babe were in the back. He told his wife where he was going, though not that he was taking the pig. Nor did he say that he did not intend to be an ordinary spectator, but instead more of a spy, to see without being seen. He wanted Pig to observe everything that went on without being spotted. Now that he had settled on the final daring part of his plan, Hoggett realized that secrecy was all important. No one must know that he owned a what? What would you call him? A sheep pig, I suppose. The trials took place 10 miles or so away in a curved basin-shaped valley in the hills. At the lower end of the basin was a road. Close to this was the starting point where the dogs would begin their outrun, and also the enclosure where they would finally pen their sheep. So there was a place that they were supposed to bring the sheep to that pen, and that was the contest. Down where all the spectators would gather, Farmer Hoggett arrived. Down there, all the spectators would gather in that valley. Farmer Hoggett, arriving sometime before them, parked the Land Rover in a lane and set off up the valley by a roundabout way, keeping in the shelter of the bordering woods. Fly was padding behind him, and Babe on the lead, trotting to keep up with his long strides. "Where are we going, Mum?" said Babe excitedly. "What are we going to do?" "I don't think we're going to do anything," said Fly. "I think the boss wants you to see something." "What?" They had reached the head of the valley now, and the farmer found a suitable place to stop under cover, but with a good view of the course, what was happening below. "Down, Fly, down. Pig, and stay," he said, and exhausted by this long speech, he stretched his long frame on. Was that a long speech? Not really. He stretched his long frame on the ground and settled down to wait. "Wants me to see what?" asked Babe. "The trials." "What's trials?" "Well," said Fly, "it's sort of a competition for sheepdogs and their bosses. Each dog has to fetch 5 sheep and move them through a number of gaps and gateways, and you can see which ones because they've got flags on either side, and then they go down to the circle that's marked out in the field right at the bottom, and there the dog has to shed some sheep." "What's shed mean?" "It means separate out from the rest. The ones to be shed will have collars on." "And then what?" "Then the dog has to gather them all again and pen them." "Is that all?" Babe did not think that was challenging. "It's not easy, dear," said Fly. "Not like moving the bunch of woolly fools of ours up and down a field. It has to be done quickly, without any mistakes. You lose points if you make mistakes." "Have you ever been to a trial, Mom?" Yes, when I was younger." "Did you ever make mistakes?" "Of course," said Fly. "Everyone does. It's very difficult work, working a small number of strange sheep in strange country. You'll see." Do you think it would be hard for Babe? I don't think so. By the end of the day, Babe had seen a great deal. The course was not an easy one, and the sheep were very different from the ones at home. They were fast and wild, and good dogs though they were, made many mistakes at the gates, in the shedding ring, and at the final penning. See? Seems like it's out of control. Babe watched every run intently. And Hoggett watched Babe, and Fly watched them both. What's the boss up to? She thought. As they drove home, he's surely never thinking that one day Babe might. No, he couldn't be that daft. Sheepdog, sheep pig, indeed. All right for the little chap to run around our place for a bit of fun, but to think of him competing in trials, even a little local one like today's, well, really? She remembered something that Babe had said in his early duck herding days. I suppose you'd say, she remarked now, that those dogs just weren't polite enough. That's right, Babe. Polite. Chapter 8. Oh, Ma! Fly's suspicions about what the farmer was up to grew rapidly over the next weeks. It soon became obvious to her that he was constructing, on his own land, a practice course. From the top of the field where the rustlers had come, the circuit which he laid out ran all around the farm, studded with hazards to be negotiated. Some to make it a little challenging for Babe to see what he could do. Some were exiting gateways or gaps. Some he made with hurdles or lines or posts between, with which the sheep had to be driven. Some were extremely difficult. One, for example, had a plank bridge over a stream. Whoa. And it was so narrow that it could only be crossed in single file, one sheep at a time. And the most honeyed words would be needed from Babe to persuade the animals to cross. Then, in the home paddock, Hoggett made a rough shedding ring with a circle of large stones, and beyond it a final pen, a small hurdle enclosure no bigger than a tiny room, with a gate which was to close when he pulled on a rope. Every day the farmer would send Fly to cut out 5 sheep from the flock, take them to the top of the hill, and hold them there. Then, starting Babe from the gate at the lower end of the farmyard, Hoggett would send him away to run them through the course. Away to me, Pig, he would say, or come by, Pig, and off Babe would scamper, as fast as his little trotters could carry him, as the farmer pulled out his pocket watch and noted the time. There was only one problem. His little trotters wouldn't carry him all that fast. Here at home, Fly realized his lack of speed didn't matter much. But, in competition, whichever 5 sheep were selected were only too anxious to oblige Babe, listen to what Babe asked, and would hurry eagerly to do whatever he wanted. But with strange sheep, it was different. Thought Fly. If the boss really does intend to run him in a trial, which it looks like he does, it's going to be different. She watched Babe's tubby, pinky white shape as he crested the hill. That evening at supper time, she watched him as he tucked into his food. Up till now, he had never worried about how much he ate. He was a growing boy. What do you think she's going to have him do? Oh, maybe go on a diet so he can go faster? Maybe. Now she thought, he's a greedy boy too, because he's full grown. Babe, she said, as with a grunt of content, he licked the last morsels off his snout. His little tin trough was as shiny clean as though Mrs. Hoggett had washed it in her sink, and his tummy was tight as a drum. Yes, Mum? You like being a sheep pig, don't you? Oh, yes, Mum. And you'd like to be really good at it, wouldn't you? The greatest. Better than any other sheep pig. Do you think there are others? Well, no. Better than any sheepdog, then. Oh, yes, I'd love to be. But I don't really think that's possible. You see, although sheep do seem to behave well for me and do what I ask, do what I tell them, I'm nowhere nearly as fast as a dog, and I never will be. No, but you could be a jolly slight faster than you are. How? Well, there are 2 things you'll have to do, dear. First, you have to go into proper training, like training for a race, right? One thing, you have to one little run around a day is certainly not enough. You'll have to practice hard, jogging hard, cross-country running, sprinting, distance work, and of course I will help you. Ooh, it all sounded like fun to Babe. Great, he said, but you said there are 2 things. Yes, eat less, said Fly. You've got to go on a diet. Any ordinary pig would have rebelled at this point, because pigs enjoy eating and also enjoy lying around. Certainly not running. And they lie around most of the day, just thinking about eating again. But Babe was no ordinary pig, and he set out enthusiastically to do exactly what Fly suggested. Under her watchful eye, he ate wisely, but not too well. And every afternoon he trained to a program which she had worked on, trotting right around the boundaries of the farm, perhaps, or running up to the top of the hill and back again, or racing up and down the paddock. Hoggett thought that Pig was just playing, but he couldn't help notice how he had grown, not fatter, as a sty-kept pig would have done, but stronger and more wiry. Oh boy, Babe's in training. There was nothing of the piglet about him anymore. He looked lean and racy and hard-muscled. Wow, and he was now almost as big as the sheep he herded. And the day came when that strength and hardness were to stand him in good stead. Should we stop? No, we have to read on. One beautiful morning, when the sky was clear and cloudless and the air so crisp and fresh that you could almost taste it, Babe woke up feeling on top of the world, like a trained athlete. He felt so charged with energy that he simply could not keep still. He bounced about the stable floor on all 4 feet, shaking his head about and uttering a series of sharp squeaks, 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 squeaks. Well, you're full of it this morning, Fly said, with a yawn. You'd better run to the top of the hill and back to work that off. Okay, Mum. And Babe was off with a shot, while Fly settled comfortably back into the straw. Dashing across the home paddock, Babe bounded up the hill and looked about for the sheep. Though he knew he would see them later on, he felt so pleased with life that he thought he would like to share that feeling with Ma and all the others before he ran home again, just to say hello, Good morning to everybody. Hello, good morning, everybody. Isn't it a lovely day? There were, he knew, in the most distant of all the fields on the farm, up on top of the lane. He looked across, expecting that they would be grazing quietly or lying comfortably and cuddling in the morning sun, only to see them galloping madly in every direction. What? They weren't resting. On the breeze came the cries of "Wolf! Wolf!" but not in the usual bored, almost automatic tones of complaint that they used when Fly worked them. These were yells, "Wolf! Wolf!" of real terror. Oh no! What's happening? Eeks! Desperate calls for help, and as he watched, two other animals came in sight, one large, one small, and he heard the sound of barking and yapping as they dashed about after the fleeing sheep. You get some wolves oh my goodness, you'll get some wolves as all chase sheep and kill them. Oh, kill them. Ma's exact words came back to Babe, remember? and without a second thought, he set off as fast as he could in the direction of the noise. Oh, my goodness. Whoa. What did Babe do? Chase that dog. What a sight greeted him when he arrived in the far field. The flock, usually so tightly bunched together, was scattered everywhere. Oh, eyes were bulging, mouths were open, their heads were hanging in evident distress, and it was clear that the dogs had been at their worrying for some time. A few sheep had tried in their terror to jump the wire fence, oh no, and become caught in it. Some had fallen into the ditches and some got stuck. Some were limping as they ran about. Oh my goodness, and on the grass were lumps of wool torn from others. Most dreadful of all, in the middle of the field, the warriors had brought down a ewe, which lay on its side, feebly kicking at them as they growled and tugged at it. On the day when the rustlers had come, Babe had felt a keen mixture of fear and anger, but now he knew nothing but blind rage, and that means anger, and he charged flat out at the two dogs, grunting and snorting with fury. Nevertheless, nearest to him was one smaller dog, a kind of mongrel terrier, which was napping at one of the ewe's hind legs. Deaf to everything in the excitement of the worry. Before it could move, Babe took it across the back and flung it, to one side, and the force of his rush carried him on to the bigger dog and knocked it flying. Go, Babe. This one, a large black crossbreed, part collie, part retriever, was made of sterner stuff than the terrier, which was already running dazedly away, and it picked itself up and came snarling back to the pig. Perhaps in the confusion of the moment, it thought that this was just another sheep. Ha, ha, ha. That he had somehow found courage to attack. But if so, it soon knew better, for as it came on, Babe chomped at it with his terrible pig's bite, the bite that grips and tears. And now it was not the sheep's blood that was spilled. Howl! Howling in pain, the black dog turned and ran, tail between its legs. It ran, in fact, for its life, with an open mouth, bristling pig hard at its heels. The field was clear. Oh no, the field was clear, and Babe suddenly came back to his senses. He turned and hurried to the fallen ewe. Ooh. Who was it? Babe stood panting by her side, a draggled side where the warriors had pulled at her, and suddenly he realized it was Ma. Ma! He cried. Ma, are you all right? She didn't seem too badly hurt. He could not see any gaping wounds, though blood was coming from over one ear where the dogs had bitten it. The old ewe opened her eyes. Her voice, when she spoke, was as hoarse as ever, but now not much more than a whisper. "Hello, young'un," she said. Babe dropped his head and gently lifted the ear to try to stop the bleeding, and some blood stuck to his snout. "Ma, can you get up?" For some time, Ma did not answer, and he looked anxiously at her. But the eye that he could see was still open. "I don't reckon I can," she said. "It's all right, Ma," Babe said. "The wolves have gone far away." And there was a chorus that filled the flock of sheep. "Far, far, far," they bleated. "And Fly and the boss will soon be here to look after you." Ma made no noise or movement. Only her ribs jumped to the thump of her tired old heart. You'll be all right. Honestly, you will, said Babe. O-R, said Ma, and then eye closed, and the ribs jumped no more. Oh, Ma, said Babe, and Ma, mourned the flock as the Land Rover came up to the lane. Oh, no. Farmer Hoggett had heard nothing of the worrying. The field was too far away, the wind in the wrong direction, but he had been anxious, and so by now it was fly, because Pig was nowhere to be found. The moment they entered the field, both man and dog could see that something was terribly wrong. Why else would the flock be so obviously distressed, panting and gasping and disheveled? Why had they formed that ragged circle? And what was in the middle of it? Farmer Hoggett strode forward, Fly before him, parting the ring to make way, only to see a sight that struck horror in both of their hearts. There before them lay a dead Hugh, and bending over it was the pig. Eeks! What was on his snout? Did you say blood? Oh no. No. Did somebody say that the farmer and Fly were going to think that Babe killed Ma? No way. Oh no. Bending over it was the pig, his snout almost touching the outstretched neck, a snout they saw that was stained with blood. We can't stop now. Chapter 9. Was it Babe? Let me see. Oh, guys. Hold on. I'm just checking. You know what? If I don't have time to read all of it, I'll come back later. I promise. You'll have it by this weekend. Chapter 9. Go home, Pig, said Farmer Hoggett in a voice that was so quiet and cold that Babe could hardly recognize it. Bewildered, he trotted off obediently, while behind him, the farmer picked up the dead Hugh and carried it to the Land Rover, and then with Fly's help, he began the task of rescuing those sheep that were caught or stuck, and of making sure that no others were badly hurt. This done, he left Fly to guard the flock, and he drove home. Back at the farm, Babe felt simply very, very sad. The sky was still cloudless, and the air still crisp. But this was a very different pig from the one that had cantered carefree up to the top of the hill just a half an hour ago. In those 30 minutes, he had seen naked fear and cruelty and death. And now, to cap it all, the boss was angry with him. He had sent him home in some sort of disgrace. What had he done wrong? He had only done his duty as a good sheep pig should. He sat in the doorway of the stables and watched as the Land Rover drove into the yard. Poor Ma's head was lolling loosely over the back. He saw the boss get out and go into the house, and then a few minutes later come out again carrying something in the crook of one arm. A long thing, a kind of black shiny tube, and walked toward him. Come, Pig, said Farmer Hoggett in that same cold voice. What is that long tube? Oh, no. I heard what you said. I'm not even going to listen. Come, Pig, said Farmer Hoggett in that same cold voice, and strode past him into the stable, while at the same moment inside the farmhouse the telephone began to ring, and then stopped as Mrs. Hoggett picked it up. Obediently, Babe followed the farmer into the dark interior. It was not so dark, however, that he could not see clearly that the boss was pointing the black shiny tube at him, and he sat down again and waited, supposing that perhaps it was some machine for giving out food, and that some quiet, unexpected surprise was going to come out of the two small, round mouths, held now quite close to Babe's face. At that instant, Mrs. Hoggett's voice sounded across the yard, calling her husband's name from the open kitchen window. He frowned, lowered the shiny tube, and poked his head out the stable door. "Oh, there you are!" called Mrs. Hoggett. "What do you think? That the police, that was the police, that was. They am ringing every farmer in the district to warn 'em that there's sheep worrying dogs about. They killed 6 sheep other side of the valley only last night. They've been seen, have 2 of 'em have. They've seen 2 of 'em they have. One, 'tis a big black un and a little brown un. And they say to shoot 'em on sight if you do see 'em. You better get back up the hill and make sure ours is all right. Do you want me to fetch your gun?" That was the black tube. A gun? Oh. Okay, so now the farmer knows that it wasn't Babe. Oh, I need some water. Oh my God. That was close. Oh my God. "No," said Farmer Hoggett, "it's all right." He waited till his wife had shut the window and disappeared, and then he walked out into the sunlight with Babe following. "Sit, Pig," he said. "Sit." And now his voice was warm again and friendly. He looked closely at the trusting face turned up to his and saw, sticking to the side of Babe's mouth, some hairs. "Whose hair?" "You're right. Not hair, fur, right?" "I reckon you gave him something to worry about." "Excuse me," he said, and he opened the gun and took out the cartridges. Meanwhile, Fly, standing guard in the far field, was terribly agitated. She knew, of course, that some dogs would attack sheep, sometimes even the very dogs trained to look after them, but surely not her sheep Pig. Surely Babe could not have done such a thing. Yet there he had been at the center of the scene of chaos, blood-stained and standing over a dead Hugh. What would the boss do to him? What, perhaps, had he already done? Yet she could not leave those fools to find out. At least, though, she suddenly realized they could tell her what happened. If the shock hadn't driven what little sense they had in their heads, their stupid heads. Never before in her long life had Fly sunk to the level of engaging a sheep in conversation. But she had to. She approached the nearest one with distaste, and it promptly backed away from her. "Stand still, fool, and tell me, who chased you? Who killed that old one?" "Wolf," said the sheep automatically. Fly growled in annoyance. Was that the only word the half-wits knew? She put the question differently. "Was it the pig that chased you? Was it Babe?" she said. "Babe, Babe," bleated the sheep eagerly. "What does that mean, bonehead?" barked Fly. "Woof! Was it or wasn't it?" "Wolf," said the sheep. Somehow Fly controlled her anger at the creature's stupidity. "I must know what happened," she thought. Babe's always talking about being polite to these woolly idiots. "Okay, I'll have to try it. I must know." She took a deep breath. "Please," she said, and then the sheep, which had begun to graze, raised their heads sharply and stared at her with an expression of total amazement. "Say that again," it said, and a number of others, overhearing, moved toward the collie. "Please," said Fly, swallowing hard. Could you be kind enough to tell me what happened?" "Hark!" interrupts the first sheep. "Hark! Hark!" Whereupon the whole flock ran and gathered around. They stood in silence, every eye fixed wonderingly on her, every mouth hanging open. "Nincompoops," thought Fly. Just when I wanted to ask one quietly, the whole fat-headed lot came around. But I must know the truth about my babe, however terrible it might be. "Please," she said once more, in a voice choked with the effort of being humble, "could you please be so kind enough to tell me what happened this morning? Did Babe—" But she got no farther, for at the mention of the pig's name, the whole flock burst out into a cry of "Babe! Babe! Babe!" Listening for the first time ever to what the sheep were actually saying, Fly could hear individual voices competing to make themselves heard in what was nothing less than a hymn of praise. "Babe came! Babe came! He saved us! He drove the wolves away! He made them pay! Hip, hip, hooray! Hip, hip, hooray!" What a sense of relief flooded her. Oh, as she heard and understood the words of the sheep. It had been sheep warriors after all, and her boy had come to the rescue. He was not the villain. He was the... Did you all say hero? You're exactly right. He was the hero. Hoggett and Babe heard the racket as they climbed the hill, and the farmer sent the pig ahead, fearing that perhaps the warriors had returned. Under cover of the noise, Babe arrived on the scene, unnoticed by Fly, just in time to hear her reply. "Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you," she cried to the flock. Thank you so much for telling me. How kind of you." "Gosh, Mom," said a voice behind her. "What's come over you?" Okay, I promise I'll be back before the end of the weekend to read chapters 11 and 12, and I'll send them right out to Mrs. Gargan. Promise. Oh, not Mrs. Gargan. This is now 3-4. To Mrs. Faust. You have a good rest of the day, and we'll continue, Babe. Maybe even later tonight. Bye-bye.